after 3 years of that, then I joined Madras Flying Club to advance further and get a radio telephony operator certificate. My main role was to communicate with the aircraft, passing the weather information to the flight crew. You also need to study the availability of en route airports along especially for a long haul flights.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to FaceTime with Leaders, a podcast series by Directors Institute World Council of Directors. I'm Priya George, and today we have a very special guest who has shaped the skies in ways that most of us can only imagine. From managing high-stakes flight operations for global airlines to pioneering cutting-edge digital transformations in aviation. Mr. Gangadharan Pradeep is a name that commands respect in the world of flight operations. But what happens behind the cockpit in the high-pressure world of global aviation when operational excellence meets innovation? With over 35 years of experience across multiple continents, Mr. Pradeep has navigated through turbulence, both literal and metaphorical, ensuring that thousands of flights take off and land safely, efficiently, and sustainably. Today, he'll share with us not just his remarkable journey, but also the behind-the-scenes insights that make flight operations one of the most complex yet critical functions in the aviation industry. We are honored to have you with us, Pradeep. Welcome to FaceTime with Leaders. We can't wait to dive into your incredible story.
Thank you so much, Priya, for this wonderful introduction. It was too good, and thanks for that. And thank you for having me for this interview with the FaceTime with Leaders. And thanks to your team and the World Council of Directors, who is doing a fantastic job. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Pradeep, it is our pleasure to have you here. Now, as I've mentioned in the introduction, you've spent over 3 decades navigating the complex world of flight operations, a field which is dynamic and challenging at the same time. From handling international flight dispatches to managing high-stakes operations, you've been at the heart of aviation's ever-evolving landscape. So my question to you is, before all of this, what sparked your passion for aviation? So could you take us back to the moment when you first realized that this was a career you wanted to dedicate yourself to? What were those early days like?
Wow. Speaking of my early days and how this led me into the aviation field of aviation, okay, I'll have to go back by maybe 40, 50 years. When I was a kid, yes, I had the opportunity to keep visiting Trivandrum airport from where I belong, near to Trivandrum. My dad was employed overseas in the Gulf in an oil company, and he had to travel every 3 months to on his leave. So every 90 days, he used to get 1 month's vacation. So he used to come down every 3 months. So I had the opportunity to go and receive him at the airport. And those days, the airport security and other issues were not there. So as a visitor, we could go very close to the aircraft, and seeing the aircraft in very close proximity, that I can tell you, definitely that was one of the main reasons which ignited me. And that stayed with me for a very long time. Yes, after my higher secondary, one of my friend, when we were having a discussion with the friends, they said like, okay, there's a institute in Chennai which gives you this aeronautical engineering course. So I was very much interested on that, and then dig further into it, and decided to join for the diploma in aeronautical engineering, which was a 3-year course. This was back in 1985. So actually, I am close now, near to 4 decades now, because right from 1985, I am attached to aviation. So I'm nearing 40 years now in aviation. And after the completion of the course, then after 3 years of that, then I joined Madras Flying Club to advance further and get a radio telephony operator certificate, which is a license issued by the Ministry of Communication. you need this license to communicate with the flight crew, with the cockpit. So that was a good experience. And being in Chennai airport, you could get more closer to the bigger aircrafts, the larger aircrafts, the aircraft movements. And also I was able to learn more on the communication and navigation requirements of safe flying and attached to airport as well as the aircraft. So this was my initial journey. Then later, I joined Trivandrum Flying Club as a maintenance trainee. Since I've done my aeronautical engineering, I did join the Trivandrum Flying Club as a maintenance journey. There I got to learn more about the aircraft mechanics, the more on the engines, the airframe, and other systems. After that, I got the opportunity. I was lucky to join Indian Airlines at Calicut Airport. That was really a remarkable journey of 5 years of learning experience. Actually, every day was a learning experience. When I joined Calicut in 1989, 1990, end of 1990, the airport had hardly any operations. It was just 3 flights a week from Bombay to Calicut and back, operated by Indian Airlines, and there was no other operation. This gave me more possibilities of learning about the airport operations, interacting with the airport officials, the air traffic controllers, the engineers behind the communication and navigation equipments, the other airport infrastructure like navigational aids, where it is located, how they function. So I got to learn more about those functions and the fueling functions, the fuel tank, where it is stored, all those. In addition to that, this was in addition to the airline experience which I got. My main role was to communicate with the aircraft, passing the weather information to the flight crew and to Bombay station where the aircraft originated before the departure of the flight, because those days the telephone communication was very bad. You have to dial STD and all that was not available. So it was through the radio communication, HF radio communication. Apart from that role, I got, due to my interest and passion in aviation, I also was able to learn the other side of the airline function, which is a passenger side. That is the preparations to be done for a passenger check-in, the preparation for how do you prepare the passenger manifest, how do you do the check-in. Those days it was manual check-in, no computer systems available. Then the boarding cards, how do you prepare the boarding cards, all those. And coming to the air side, maintaining all the equipments, the preparation of before the aircraft lands, the checking the serviceability of all the required equipments, ground equipments, the preparation from the engineering side, the availability of the fuel truck and other equipments. After the aircraft lands, again, the servicing of the aircraft, cleaning of aircraft, refueling of aircraft, all those. So I got a complete exposure. I got completely exposed, and the exposure was so much in the 5 years. When I left Calicut, I left as with a full picture of how an airline as well as an airport function. And this helped me in my later journey in the management side, the technical side, and the administrative side. And today I owe all my success, the experience at my what I got from Calicut. During this journey at Calicut, the Indian Airlines started international flights. That's basically from Calicut to Sharjah and back. So when the international flight started, the flight dispatchers started coming on posting to Calicut from different stations, Delhi, Bombay, and Chennai. On rotation, they used to come. So one of the senior officers, seeing my interest, suggested me that I should do the flight dispatch course, which I never knew that it existed at that time. And he said it's conducted only at Delhi Flying Club. So it's a 3-month course, and you need to spend 3 months over there. So I immediately took up that option, and I decided to join for the next batch, and that's how I got into flight dispatch.
Okay.
So what a flight dispatch, most of the people do not know what flight dispatch is. In fact, even the airline employees, majority of the airline employees even doesn't know that what a flight dispatcher does. Flight dispatchers are actually, flight dispatchers are actually behind the scene. They coordinate they coordinate with the pilots and the air traffic controllers. So it's a link between the pilots and the flight dispatchers, a link between the pilots and the air traffic control for the preparation of the flight, and also
Okay.
for in-flight assistance if any required.
Okay.
So the flight
Interesting.
dispatchers actually they are the script writers of the flight. They write the script for a particular flight from which is flying from A to B, and the pilots enact as per the script written by the dispatchers.
Okay.
So
Okay.
when I say the script, it is basically the route
Yes.
planning, the
That's what I
meticulous
wanted to
planning.
know.
Yes, the meticulous
Mhm.
planning of the route. Like we have
Okay.
national highways and other roads which
Correct.
we can utilize from going from destination from A to B, like going from Mumbai to Pune or from Mumbai to Delhi. You can take different options, different routes are available. But we
Correct.
always prefer to take the most convenient route where facilities are available en route, and
Correct.
no other obstacles are available, work in progress, delays. So you do a planning before you go for a long journey. It's not like your
Got
daily
it.
trip.
Got
Similarly,
it.
for every flight, you need to do a planning. Even if it's a
Absolutely.
Delhi, you are flying 10 times a day, but still for each flight, you have to do a planning because of the dynamic nature of the flight. So the most important thing what we go through is the airport restrictions, the airline restriction, the airspace restrictions. Sometimes the airspace gets closed due to
Hmm.
missile launches or air force activities
Got it.
or some other rocket launch. So due to
Right.
these, the airspace gets closed, like when there's a PSLV launch. So they close a complete area of airspace for which we get an advance notification. So
Got
we
it.
check all these airspace closures, the airway
Hmm.
closures, and based on that, we select the most optimized route.
Okay. So
The
the route
second
can be
factor
different every time? Can the route from say
for a
from Bombay to Delhi?
for a domestic sector, 95 to 90 to 95% of the time it should be the same.
Hmm.
But for international flights, this could vary. Flying over the Asian, there many a times there will be closures. The airways may not be available.
Got
There
it.
will be one-way airways restrictions, flight level restrictions. So this for international flights, especially for long haul and ultra long haul flights, that's flying from India to Europe and the US, it's definitely a challenge.
Got it. Got it.
So it's not only the airspace restriction. The second part is the weather along the route.
Weather.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a big factor.
Is there any turbulence, known turbulence reported? So if there
Got
is a
it.
high turbulence reported, then you change the route.
Got it.
If there is icing reported, which can affect your engine performance, then you may have to
Yes.
change the flight levels or the speed or the route. So all
Got
these
it.
factors are taken into consideration. Third factor is
Okay.
the availability of en route airports. You also need to study the availability of en route airports along especially for a long haul flights and ultra long haul flights, because in case of any emergency,
Emergency.
it could be a technical emergency, it could be a medical emergency,
Got it.
or any other
Got it.
emergency where the aircraft has to divert. So
Understood.
this is where the role of the in-flight assistance to the crew comes. So where
Mm.
the operational control plays an important role. Operational control, again, the in-flight assistance in the operational control, it's done by the flight dispatchers. So they immediately, once they get the information of any technical diversion required, they immediately look out for the nearest available airport, the facilities available, the weather at the airport, and then informs the pilot accordingly. Finally, it's the pilot in command who has to take the decision. But the pilot sitting in the air, he will be having a limited resources to get all this information. Also, to get
Understood.
information from the air traffic control, also it's difficult because the air traffic control, it's coordinating with so many other aircrafts.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
in an emergency, they will definitely help you, but then they also need time to segregate their duties. So this is where the role of the flight dispatchers or the operational controllers come in picture, where the operational controllers at the same time are handling multiple flights. They have a global picture, especially for international airlines like Air India. They have a global picture. They have they definitely know about the weather in each region, the closures, space closures at each region, and also the airport closures. So everything is at their fingertips. Yes, definitely they have to look for the current information. So this is how the flight dispatch and the operational control functions. And
Okay.
this exposure, I got it after. Okay, sorry. Now coming back to my journey after Calicut, after finishing the flight dispatcher's course, I joined Jet Airways at Mumbai as a flight dispatcher, and soon I was elevated to a duty manager flight dispatch. But I was there only for a short period of less than a year, because immediately I got employed with Air India as an assistant manager in flight dispatch.
So, Mr. Pradeep, clearly you have accumulated a wealth of experience right from your early years when you just started out. And you've had the privilege of working with some of the biggest names in aviation, one of which you mentioned in your earlier response, which was Air India, and also Kuwait Airways. So, what was one of the most challenging projects you have led, and how did it shape your leadership style?
Thank you for this question. Okay, I will not stick to one particular project I had. Was part of multiple projects during my whole career. One was the implementation of a new flight planning system, then implementation of operational control center, and implementation of electronic flight bag, that is getting away with the paper manuals and switching over to an electronic cockpit. It's a paperless cockpit. And then the electronic flight folder, fuel efficiency. These are the many few projects which I have handled. And I'm not sticking to any particular project because the challenges for all these projects were more or less the same. How these projects get initiated is that, like, first when you want to do something, okay, you talk to people, you talk to your managers, and then you build a business case for the project. And when it's time to you have to prove that it's time to move on from the legacy systems to a more advanced system, which can bring in more efficiency and more profitability for the airline in the long term. So building up the business case and convincing all the stakeholders and the higher management to get the approval, it's one of the biggest challenge. The reason is that, like, these all involve very, very high cost. So getting
Right.
the senior management approval is one of the biggest challenge. Then
Okay.
once that is done, the second challenge comes the convincing all the stakeholders involved for implementing this project. So getting everybody on board and getting okay from all the stakeholders, that's the second challenge. Then coming to the identifying the vendors or the industry best vendors who can provide the suitable softwares. So studying the industry best practices and then making your own RFP, the request for proposal from the different vendors, studying their proposals, and then making the request for quotations. So these are the process which we follow before implementation of any project. And once we get the RFQs, then again involve all the stakeholders. Communication with all the stakeholders is very, very important at all times to clear any doubts and clear any obstacles. So involve all stakeholders and do a due diligence of all the quotations received, do a technical study, technical evaluation, and then select the most suitable vendor. And then comes the regulatory approvals. Once we have to see that, okay, the vendor selected complies with all the regulatory approvals which is required, the regulations. Basically, for an international operator, we need to look at the ICAO requirements, then the EASA requirements, that's which is the European Airspace Agency requirements, the Federal Aviation Regulation requirements, and most important, convincing our own regulator, which is whether it's Kuwait or India, it's the Director General of Civil Aviation. So the DGCA inspectors needs to be convinced with the proper documentation, and the checklist of DGCA is followed. So that's another big challenge, getting the regulators convinced. But once you know what the requirements are like, and when you you have done your homework about the regulatory requirements, then it's a cakewalk. Otherwise, it's a very,
Okay.
very difficult. Yes, in the initial stages, I had to struggle, but then when I understood what their requirements like, what they are looking at, so you do your own homework, you do your risk analysis, you have your mitigations in place, go with your risk analysis and with your mitigations, get it cleared. So any issues, any questions they come up with, like you already have done your risk analysis and you already have your mitigations in place. So that is another challenge which you face. Then coming the most important part of the implementation. Implementations has to be
Right.
done on phases. So the first to start with the trial phase, and then evaluate the results of the trial phase, whatever the obstacles or any issues that you have faced, uh, discuss with the stakeholders, discuss with the vendor, discuss with the IT or whatever, and resolve those issues before you finally implement. And again, during the trial phase implementation, another challenge is convincing the users, because they have to run two parallel systems, the legacy system and the new system. And
Okay.
there's always a challenge coming from the user end for during the trials because of the shortage of manpower as usual everywhere. So
Right.
for which you need additional manpower, you as a project team, you need to put in your additional efforts. You should most of the time you need to give a 24/7 support to the end user team, because they will not be fully aware of how to handle the issues, and they do not have the time to handle any issues on the new system. So they immediately stop that and switch over
Understood.
to the legacy system. So these are the main
Understood.
challenges, and these challenges basically could be overcome by having proper communication and proper training to the end users. Training to end users is very, very important. The training on the system, and also convincing them that, okay, this is going to improve efficiency and they can do more flights in a less amount of time. And also the overall, the airline, the company is going to benefit. So this is most important. So
Right.
these are the few challenges which you face whenever you implement any new system, whether it's a flight planning system or a operational control system or a crew management system. That's it. Thank you.
So, Pradeep, clearly it was obvious that along with technical expertise, you had to handle many high pressure situations as well. And now we have understood from your conversation so far that flight operations in a multidisciplinary environment is not easy. But setting up the integrated operations control center for a major airline must have definitely been an extraordinary challenge. So, bringing together diverse teams, systems, ensuring everything runs like clockwork, and there's a lot of stake. So, could you share with us what that experience like was for you, and the hurdles, and what did you learn along the way?
Thanks, Priya, for this question, which I was waiting for actually. And definitely, it was an extraordinary challenge, given the reason that the operational control center was meant for uh, three different airlines, in the sense the airlines were getting merged. Indian Airlines, Air India getting merged. Yes, Air India Express was a standalone site, and also we had Alliance Air. But then the operation control center had to be common for all the four airlines. And the
Oh,
merger of Indian Airlines and Air India itself was a huge task and a huge challenge. And having a common operational control center for the people coming from diversified strategies and processes was another major challenge. And coming to operational control center, it was always on the back of my heart to have an advanced operational control center, because in 2002, I had attended a World Flight Dispatch Conference at Toronto, which was conducted by IFALDA, the International Airline Flight Dispatchers Association. As part of the conference, they had taken all the attendees from global attendees were there, were taken to have a look at Air Canada Operational Control Center. It was a half-day tour, but then I was so much interested in that I stayed the whole day over there to understand how the operational control center functions. Though in Air India and Indian Airlines, you had control centers, which was called a control center, and in Indian Airlines, it was called as a coordination center. But all those processes were done manually. Nothing was integrated. You didn't have any systems to do all this. I was very much amazed at seeing the operational control center of Air Canada. And from there, my dream of having an advanced operational control center was there. And after this merger, then I heard that, okay, Air India is going to have a integrated operational control center, and the talks were on at the senior management level. So I immediately put forward my dream, and I said I need to be part of this team, and I managed to be part of the team. But the senior management identified that this is going to be a major task, because getting people from all the different departments and both the airlines was very, very difficult. So they decided to hire a consultant. So a consultant was hired, a very, very professional consultant based from Germany, who had major exposure with the global airlines. So I was very lucky to work with them and understand the processes of the implementation. So the implementation of this was done through this consultant, the German consultant, right from basically getting all the stakeholders. They did a very fantastic job of getting all the stakeholders in one room and sitting with them for almost 2 to 3 days, and basically the directors, and conveying to them the various benefits of coming together and implementing this project. Once the directors were convinced, and then it boiled down to the end users. Then it come to the selection of the. So once this was finalized, then it was the selection of the vendors. Again, since nobody was very clear on the processes of having an integrated systems, how to integrate the systems. You need to integrate the flight planning system, the crew management system, the reservation system, load control system, maintenance system. So all these need to be integrated, and for the systems to talk to each other, the most important, I always keep telling, is that it's easy to integrate the systems, but for that you need the humans to talk to each other, which is the most difficult task, because everyone want to protect their boundary. Nobody wants to come out of their boundary. Nobody wants to leave their boundary and open up. So bringing together everyone was a most major challenge, which the consultant managed. And once that was done, then the processes were made of the system selection, and again the RFPs, RFQs, all were done through the with the help of the consultant. And again, due diligence was done for selecting the vendor. That was another wonderful experience, sitting with the consultants and doing diligence. 3 rooms from morning 9 to 6, just for 3 days. We were sitting together and doing the due diligence and the technical evaluation of the various quotes which he had received. That was a wonderful experience. Then come to the implementation part. The final implementation, the selection of location of the operational control was another issue, because Air India had the headquarters, or the major functions were from Mumbai. Indian Airlines, it was from Delhi. But finally, because of the merger, the headquarters was supposed to be at Delhi, and then at the board level, it was decided the location will be at Delhi, which was a good choice. And then the challenge came. The location at Delhi was supposed to be at T3, and the T3 was not inaugurated at that time. So the inauguration of T3 and the inauguration of Operational Control Center was to be at the same time. So that was another challenge, because T3 work was in progress. The IT connections, the telephone connections, the all infrastructure was still undergoing. So in parallel, the Operational Control Center implementation process also was on. So finally, we managed to end up with the world-class Operational Control Center. that was one of the wonderful experience which I had.
So now, Pradeep, handling VVIP flights, it's a responsibility that comes with immense pressure and attention to detail, especially when it involves dignitaries like India's president and prime minister. And those are moments where everything needs to be flawless with little room for error. So I'm curious what your experience was, or if you have any one experience or one of those moments which stand out to you where you felt the weight of the responsibility, but also it gave you a sense of pride and accomplishment in how you managed it.
Handling VVIP flights is again another different kind of challenge. My experience at working with different airports. Okay, first I said I had the opportunity to work at Calicut. Then
Correct.
during my tenure at Air India, initially I was posted at Trivandrum, and I had the at Trivandrum I was handling the flight operations independently. And when Cochin International Airport started, which is a greenfield airport, that again
Okay.
before I had the opportunity to work at Cochin International Airport even before the airport was inaugurated, a greenfield airport, new runway, new infrastructure, new facilities. So I was able to work with different teams of the airport. Where whatever I learned from Calicut, I was actually able to put into practice at Cochin. So
Okay.
this uh, exposure of dealing with the different agencies at the airport helped me to navigate the challenges of the VVIP flights. So not everybody gets an opportunity to be part of the VVIP flight for a long time, and I was one of the lucky few to be a part of the VVIP team, and we had a very good team. So what happens before VVIP flight? Before the VVIP flight is that, like, once we get the information of the the Prime Minister or the Honorable President is intending to travel to so and so destination, immediately we do a route study, the airport study, the basic information about the airport, and do a route study. Again, as I said earlier, is taking care of everything. Okay, in this case, extra cautions are taken with the whatever information we have for the day of operations, whether about the weather, whether it is anticipated any changes, any closures anticipated, taking all that into consideration. The route planning is done. Why it was done in advance is that, like, to decide on the block time. The block time is what time the flight has to leave and what time the flight has to arrive at the destination. Because
Okay.
the arrival time is very important, because of the most of the time the ceremonial function will be there for the VVIP, because the head of the state of that country will be coming to receive the head of the state of our country. So for that,
Understood.
that timings has to be very perfect. So for that, the block time study is done in advance and then conveyed to the ministry, and based on that, the timings will be decided and given back to us. Then an advanced team goes to this airport, the destination. Basically, if it's a offline station that which Air India is not operating to, it could be a remote station or a small airport. So an advanced team from members of different departments and from the members from the ministry and the embassy go visit this airport. A 3 day study is done at the airport about the complete infrastructure available at the airport. Because normally those days it was 747-400, the huge jumbo jet which used to operate, and many
Boeing.
small airports will, yeah, Boeing, and many airports may not be having this ground facilities like the even the step ladder or the ground service units or ground power units. Those may not be available. Fuel may not be available. So these are the challenges which you face when handling a VVIP flights. So you do a coordination, and with the coordination from the ministry and through the embassy, all these arrangements are made, and any issues or anything that needs to be resolved is brought back and then followed up with the station for resolving these issues. And before the flight, 2 or 3 days before the flight, again the route study is again reviewed, and a flight plan is made, and the pilots who are selected to operate these flights, they come to the operations, and a full briefing is given to those pilots about the route, the weather, any limitations or restrictions expected based on, and then the fuel requirement, and any other restrictions that is expected is all discussed well in advance. And then simulator session is arranged for the pilots to do an approach and landing for that airport, the concerned airport, so that they're very familiar with the airport before they actually land at the airport. So those simulator sessions are arranged. Then before the flight, a test flight is carried out by the engineering team to ensure that all aircraft systems function normally, and the same flight crew does a test flight also. So all these are very meticulously planned. And on the day of operations, the whole machinery works together for the on-time departure. And then after the flight is airborne, in-flight monitoring is done, assistance is given. So in coordination with the arrival stations, sometimes you anticipate a delay in an arrival of the ceremonial team, the head of the state. Then accordingly, you may have to delay the landing of the flight. So the dispatcher coordinates with the captain of the flight and then ask him to adjust the speed accordingly, whether for an early arrival or for a late arrival. Coordinate with the air traffic control of the station to give a priority in case of congestion. Then the parking slots, then all the equipments are checked well in advance about the serviceability. So these are the various challenges that you face when handling a VVIP flight. Okay, coming to one of the challenges which I faced was in at one of the Russian airports. I don't want to name the airport, but this was a small airport, and they didn't have any large aircraft operating over there. So the survey was done by a different team. I was not part of the survey team, but then the dispatcher who had gone for the survey was not able to go for the actual flight for some reasons, and I was pulled out at the last minute. So before leaving, I was told there was some issue with the pavement, that's the strength of the runway and the parking area, because each runway and parking area, the taxiways, all has a pavement strength populated or published, where the weight of the runway can bear the weight of the aircraft. So this particular runway was not able, as per the published values, this particular aircraft could not bear the weight of a jumbo jet with the anticipated weight, with the fuel and the baggage and the passengers. So it was a difficult task after reaching over there to coordinate with the airport authorities because of the one is because of the language issues. So you had a translator, and you have to explain to the translator, and then the translator has to explain to the authorities. And after about 3-4 hours of a continuous meeting, then was able to get a meeting with the airport director, the number one at the airport. And then finally, he was convinced that, yes, this is an issue. But during the conversation, he had mentioned that, okay, this runway was recarpeted a few months back. And after the recarpeting, there were 2 operations of 747-400, and the values are already there with them, and it's all approved values. I said, it's fine, good enough. But the issue again, I thought, okay, everything is done, and I was relieved. But the issue was that, like, they issue the letter in Russian language. Which we do not know what it is. And it was almost approaching evening, and the next day was a flight, and I was getting pressure from my headquarters, from my director of operations and the executive commander of the VVIP flight, what is to be done, because if this is not done, then they have to offload baggage, they may not be able to take the whole contingent. All those issues were there. So every half an hour, 1 hour, I was getting the calls of what's happening. So I immediately got this letter and rushed to the embassy and got it translated officially from the embassy, and with the embassy seal, it was sent to the crew and my headquarters, and we could save the situation. That was one of the challenging situation which I still remember. Though every flight, there is some challenge or the other like this. Sometimes you may not have fuel, you may have to get the fuel from another station. In one of the stations, I remember still in San Francisco, another airport in San Francisco, where the jumbo jet was, where the step ladder was not available. The step ladder was available for a jumbo, but then the condition was not very convincing. So we had to visit another 3 airports, nearby airports. The survey team, we visited another 3 airports, and finally we got a good condition step ladder, and then they had agreed to provide us 1 day before the arrival of the flight. So these are the challenges which you face.
So, Pradeep, looking at the industry as a whole today and considering the dynamic nature of the aviation industry, what do you see as the most significant challenges the global aviation sector is facing right now? And from your experience, from your perspective, how do you think we could address or overcome these challenges in the coming years?
Thank you for this question. And okay, there are multiple challenges which is we faced globally. One is the current geopolitical situation, which is leading to many airspace closures, especially for the international flights, where they have to take a long day routes, which involves additional flying time of 2 to 3 hours, especially for the European carriers or the flights to Europe. Luckily, India, we have a good relation with Russia. We are still using the Russian airspace, but the European and US carriers are avoiding the Russian airspace, which means they have to do a detour, and where the flying time increases by 2 to 3 hours, which means you are burning another additional 5 to 10 tons of additional fuel, where you're again affecting your carbon emissions. When we talk more about carbon emissions and
Carbon
sustainability, but carbon footprint. On the other side, we are increasing the carbon footprint because of these geopolitical situations. Then the safety and security of the flights. The recent attack between Israel and whatever, I don't want to name the countries, but during the recent escalation time, one of the aircrafts were very close to the firing range, but then they got diverted to a nearby station because they couldn't make to the destination because of the fuel shortage. There were many flights which got diverted actually, and because this happened without any notice. So this is one major situation, which is a major challenge to the most of the international carriers. Another next challenge is about the climate change, and which is leading to the sustainability. The airlines should the focus on the sustainable aviation fuel, where everybody talks about net zero by 2050, where the carbon emission should be reduced to zero level, which is a huge challenge and a very high ambition at this stage, because the sustainable aviation fuel production is less than 1% at this time. But to get into net zero, all the stakeholders, all the government agencies need to come together. By 2050, I think the projection is around 63 or 65% of the fuel is usage should be sustainable fuel. But that's a huge challenge unless all the government agencies come together and do something for this. Third challenge is training. Trained manpower or the human resources. There's a huge shortage of pilots, aircraft maintenance engineers, flight dispatchers, the ground staff. So more focus should be on the training. The training center, there should be more training centers, should be more focus should be on proficiency-based training rather than just theoretical knowledge. The students should be exposed to, or the trainees should be exposed to more practical knowledge, use of artificial intelligence and machine learning and virtual learning should be introduced. So basically more high-tech training centers should come up. That is another challenge which is there. Then the regulatory changes. The regulations need to get updated with the changes in technology. So this is another factor which the regulators and the government should look into, so that the airlines can implement the technology, the latest technology at more ease. Normally what happens is that like the regulators are difficult to catch up with the technology. So unless the regulators, the government and the technology are in the same frequency, there will be more delays in implementations. This is another challenge which happens. Then the air traffic management. airspace management. So you need to have more air traffic controllers coming in. The skies need to open up. The but today we have a limited sky, but then we need to see like how we can accommodate more aircrafts in that limited sky. So for that, the airport infrastructure has to be improved accordingly.
Thank you for sharing your response with us, Pradeep. With your extensive experience in flight operations and leadership, what are your aspirations for the future? Particularly in terms of advancing to strategic roles such as executive leadership or board positions?
Leveraging my last 35 to 40 years of experience in aviation from the air traffic management side of the complete picture which I have about the functioning of aviation, uh, I would definitely like to utilize my experience and exposure for more or strategic roles for decision making roles like the policy making, policy frameworks, the regulatory frameworks, and give my thoughts about all this. Thank you.
Uh, Going on to, we are nearing the end of the interview nearly. So, since you've been in this industry for quite a few decades now, how do you see the role of ESG practices, the environmental, social, and governance practices evolving in the aviation industry? And how do you think airlines can contribute to sustainability?
Basically, through sustainable aviation fuel, how we can reduce the carbon emissions, and for which we need to have more sustainable aviation fuel coming in, the production of more sustainable aviation fuel. Second is what is about the hydrogen fueled aircrafts. I believe,
Got it.
yeah, already the aircraft manufacturers are looking at hydrogen fueled aircrafts, which the first aircraft is likely to come out somewhere in 2035, and maybe the production should be around maybe somewhere around 2050 or maybe before that. But again, the challenges there are like the airport infrastructure and making availability of hydrogen. All those things hopefully should get sorted out by then. Again, the reducing the use of paper, which most of the airlines are already using it. I was happy to implement the same in my current airline, where we switched over from the paper documents on board, where the flight crew used to carry about 60 to 80 kgs of paper manuals, different flight manuals, which are mandatory documents which are supposed to be carried. That's a airplane flight manual, flight crew operating manuals, the quick reference handbooks and operation manuals, various manuals, hard copy, which each manual has around 500, 600 pages, which finally, and the bag itself is which used to be around 60 to 80 kgs or 100 kgs. So
Wow.
we were able to manage that to reduce all that into one iPad. Now all these documents fits in the iPad. So that's a huge amount of saving for the airline because every kg of fuel carried is you are burning a percentage of that. So which means you are adding to the carbon emission as well as burning
Correct.
the fuel, which is a loss for the airline. So by switching over to the electronic flight bag, we not only save on the fuel, but also on the paper, contributing to
Okay.
the environment. So more airlines should look into this and reduce the use of paper, getting away with this printing boarding cards. Now,
Correct.
few airlines have started with the digital boarding cards,
Correct.
digital the
DigiYatra.
bag. Yes. Pardon? Yeah.
DigiYatra is one app
Yeah.
like where you can.
DigiYatra is one to reduce your ease of check-in. So these are the different ways where the can care. Like, but then again, the industry participation is required, where I feel I can play an important role in this with my.
So, thank you for your inputs on, to conserve fuel and contributing to the ESG principles and initiatives. It's wonderful that you've recently joined Directors Institute. How has your experience been so far? Like, what inspired you to become part of the institute, and how do you feel it'll help your journey in aviation?
I was always looking at joining the board level or the executive level roles because I was fully prepared to take up executive level roles. And then through LinkedIn, I to see more about the Directors Institute, the way the course was structured, the different modules were structured, inspired me to okay to take up this course because it is I found this more structured. It's a wonderful experience going with the Directors Institute.
Uh, Pradeep, thank you so much for sharing your insights. They have been really valuable. And for also taking the time to share your remarkable journey with us today. It is nothing short of inspiring. We at Directors Institute wish you continued success as you lead the way in aviation and beyond. So thank you for being here with us and answering our questions.
Thank you so much, Priya, and thank you, the World Council of Directors team, for this wonderful opportunity for me to share my journey. Thank you so much.
It's been our pleasure. With that, we conclude today's episode. We hope you've been inspired by Mr. Pradeep's experiences and leadership. Stay tuned for more insightful conversations with outstanding leaders in our upcoming episodes. Until then, keep soaring high and making an impact wherever you go. See you soon. Thank you.